Hello, I'm Dave Grossi. They've been called America's greatest generation. Young men, some as young as 15, who put aside the most formative years of their life to help defend freedom during World War II. Years that should have been spent going to baseball games, attending college, going out on dates, but instead they willingly put their lives on hold, put on a uniform, left their cities and towns for parts unknown, in essence saved America from the tyranny that was spreading across Europe and that had indeed come home on December 7th, 1941. This is their story. The Department of Veterans Affairs estimates that there are fewer than 1 million World War II vets still alive out of the 16 million that served during the war. And the VA also estimates that well over 400 die every day, and that by 2036 there will be no World War II vets left. You're going to meet some of these incredible people now. Listen as Staff Sergeant Bill Pace, a Purple Heart recipient, recalls his story about how he was forced to bail out of a B-17 bomber 5 miles up over Germany when his plane was struck, and then how he spent the last few months of the war in 2 POW camps in Germany. And Army PFC Lloyd Roush, who helped liberate the infamous Dachau concentration camp, and Staff Sergeant Mario Grossi, who helped liberate the notorious Woblin concentration camp. They'll describe for you the horrors, the sights, the smells that only a veteran who's been there and done that can describe. Army hero Tech Sergeant George West, recipient of the Silver Star for Gallantry, and he'll relate how his citation calls what he became a one-man patrol when his unit was almost wiped out in Germany. You'll be spellbound by Navy veteran Vic Bucket, one of only a handful of survivors of the USS Indianapolis that was torpedoed by a Japanese sub during a top-secret mission, delivering the components of the atomic bomb that helped end the war in Japan. He'll describe for you his experiences during his struggle for survival over 4 days in shark-infested waters, watching as over 600 of his crewmates drowned or were eaten alive by sharks when their ship's distress signals were ignored. Their stories will undoubtedly invoke many emotions: pride, sorrow, even anger. But as our film progresses, I'm convinced that those emotions will compel you to watch and listen. For several of these vets, it's the very first time they've related their wartime experiences, but they've all agreed to be part of this most important historical and educational project. Hear now as these heroes tell their stories of their years spent in Europe, the Pacific, or in critical duties stateside. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bonita Springs Historical Society is proud to present Bonita's Greatest Generation in their own words.
My name is George R. West, and I should say I was discharged as a tech sergeant and sergeant major in the infantry. I was 21. But first, I think I should tell you that my goal as a little kid was to be an architect. I was so young at the time. I wanted to build buildings. I was so young at the time that I'd forget the word architect, and I would have to ask my mother. And she filled in the word architect, and so I had that as a goal. And in turn, in high school, having taken the college curriculum and also the drafting curriculum, which was a vocational aspect of high school, my senior year, I went to work for an architectural firm, and I eventually was with them for 34 years. So when I enlisted in the service, rather than being drafted, I signed up for the ASTP program, Army Specialized Training Program. And with the understanding we would go back to college. And in fact, I had a fraternity brother that signed up for the same program with the Navy, and I was not a swimmer. He could swim. And I thought it'd be easier going in the Army. And I was not very athletic. And I signed up for this program, and we had to take an infantry basic, 13 weeks. Normal basic was 17. But since we had to have an IQ of 128 or gooder, and I must have been in the gooder class, we in turn went to the infantry and went to the school at Fort Benning, Georgia, infantry group. And then in turn, they told us after we completed our 13 weeks of basic that the program had folded and you're going to go to a line infantry outfit. So we were assigned to the 86th Infantry Division, and that was evolved from the Blackhawks, and which is a hockey team in Chicago. When I first went in the infantry, they assigned me to the intelligence section at its lowest level, which means scouts out. And I think everyone that's been in the service, particularly infantry, knows what that term means. We then went from Louisiana to California, and we were trained by the Marines in amphibious landings, and we made 100 amphibious landings off the coast of California. And there's a maze of islands out there. You never see those islands when you're taking geography in grade school, but there are many islands off the coast of California. The Battle of the Bulge happened in Germany, and we were shipped over to support the Battle of the Bulge. And we were shipped by train to across Canada and out one of the New England ports, and we were on a troop ship, and the German subs were waiting for us, and so we got to play hopscotch with the subs, but the smarts of the Navy brought us through, and we landed in Le Havre, France. Now, Le Havre, France was devastated as far as their docks were concerned, and so we made an amphibious landing off the coast of Le Havre, France. And I also saw the vertical cliffs that our American troops went up on D-Day. And then from France, we went into Belgium and Holland, and then we went on across the Danube, first the Rhine, and then the Danube. And the Danube we crossed at night on a blown bridge. And I was assigned at the tail of our column. This was the entire division going across. And I was assigned to the rear with some first sergeants. And we fortunately were not attacked. And My mother must have been praying very hard for us, because I had several escapades that happened after the fact. I can remember one is our battalion headquarters. We'd been billeted in a home in Germany, the whole headquarters, and we pulled out that afternoon, and the following night the Germans came in with bayonets, and there wasn't the battalion headquarters that relieved us was no more. They just wiped out the entire headquarters. And we, during all this time, we were attached to Patton's army, and the advantage of Patton's army, he had his tanks out ahead of us, which they took many blows for us. And as we progressed through the Black Forest and such, we could see remnants of Patton's army, or the German army, as a result of Patton's tanks. Well, in intelligence section, we had to go on a patrol. I have it written up here if you'd like to read it. But there again, I was very fortunate. And as I mentioned before, I can remember being in German artillery barrages, the 88 artillery barrage, and it could be very devastating. And you could crawl up. I literally crawled up into my helmet, and the only thing that was protruding was my feet. So, and I can remember our first artillery barrage. We had a captain, infantry captain, and it was his first encounter of the enemy, and we were billeted in a home, and we all headed for the basement. It did knock out our kitchen truck parked outside in the street, and eliminated some of the staff on the truck. And he said, gee, he said, if this is war, I don't want any part of it. Of course, we were just starting out. I was just simply on, as you can read, on a patrol on through German area, and they've ultimately had to call in the Air Force, which you're familiar with, and the Germans had such a control and vision down the side of a low hill that we just couldn't, they'd stopped an entire division, so we had to hold up until they pulled in the Air Force to eliminate them. But my patrol was, keep it very simple, was reconnoitering for this machine gun nests or such that was controlling our advance. And I can tell you what the, what is it, not rockets, mortar fire is like. And whether you're under mortar fire or artillery, it's not always pleasant. So when the information would come down for attack for the next day, with my background having worked as a draftsman, I got the job of making the overlays, and I was very fortunate in that respect. I knew what was going on, and was very advantageous, and make the overlays, and then we'd send them to our company commanders in our battalion so they would know what to do for tomorrow morning. One time, they blew the bridge before we were able to get across it. And we had been online for 26 days of continuous combat. And we were withdrawn behind the lines, and they put in a heavy weapons company from our battalion, and in that the Germans knew where we were. They, with their accuracy of their artillery, this heavy weapons company suffered some 45% casualties. We were pulled out that afternoon to move on, and a new battalion, another battalion headquarters set up in the same location, and the Germans came in at night, and they used their their bayonets, and they carefully wiped out an entire headquarters. So I was just on a series of events that saved my neck, so to speak. Then when we were within 20 miles of the Alps, we were held up to meet the Russians. Well, we waited for 2 weeks and we never saw the Russians. So they pulled us back and they shipped us to the States. In the meantime, the war was over in Europe, and we went to the States for 30 days recuperation furlough, and all my girlfriends found other fellows, and so I was very pleased to see my folks. And we went back to we went to California, and then in turn we were shipped to the Pacific, and we were assigned to the Philippines. So we waited there, and we were scheduled for D+6 invasion of Japan, our infantry division. And then in turn, Harry Truman dropped the bomb, which saved, we thought, 100,000 lives, and I've heard other quotes, a great deal more than that. When I met my wife, she had been as a young nurse, she had taken care of the prisoners, and German prisoners and Japanese prisoners, and Indiana University Hospital. I think we were in the Philippines, and I remember I used my architectural training to lay out a simple plan for a enlisted man's quarters, like a bar, and oh, that's all it was, a bar and a large room, and tables or benches all the way around. It was very simply done, but we built that while we were waiting to invade Japan. And I can remember the Filipino girls would do your laundry. And after the war was over in the Philippines, the government gave every soldier a case of beer a month and a carton of cigarettes. And those cigarettes I used to pay for my laundry. This map came from one of my very good friends. He's now deceased, but he attended all the infantry divisions. Once a year they'd have a convention, and that's where he acquired that map for me. I acquired some very good friends, and I can remember my brother was in the Air Force, and he was in Germany, and after the war was over, we were able to get together, and I introduced my brother, who was 7 years older than I introduced him to my friends, and after he left, they wanted to know how I could be so ornery and how he could be such a fine man. I remember one movie that I saw after the war. It was something about Saving Private Ryan, and that brought back many memories. Well, to try to adjust back to civilian life and have a goal and work towards that goal. Now, I went back to our architectural firm and worked and until the following fall came along, and I started back to college. And well, Camp Atterbury was south of Indianapolis, and we were discharged at Camp Atterbury, and we spent a great deal of time waiting to be able to come across from the Philippines and then be in turn discharged. And I can remember my parents coming down and picking me up. And it was, I think, on Easter Sunday. And my father, I never saw him cry, but he cried that day when he picked me up.
But first I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for allowing us to take this time with you, George.
Okay.
Thank you. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you've enjoyed this program. It's been both an honor and a pleasure to help these vets tell their story, and the Bonita Springs Historical Society welcomes your comments. I'm Dave Grossi. Thank you.